Interesting.
It surely is. It was like, this town is big enough for the two of us, is what Abram was saying there a lot.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have when your possessions are so great. You're like, yeah, we need more land and we got to split up, and that's a good problem. But further problems are going to happen because Lot chose to go down to the plain of Sodom and Gomorrah. And you're like, bro, it makes me wonder if they were as corrupt as we see later, just makes me wonder. And of course, that means there was land for sale in the region of the 5 cities of the plain. Just little practical details. You're like, I mean, surely he couldn't just, it didn't say he took over through warfare. So I'm guessing that means there was available land somehow.
Either that or he found some connections and people had some to spare. But yeah, it's likely he bought it, especially since their resources were so vast.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe he did a situation where he's like, yeah, if I could let my sheep graze on your land, I'll give you a portion at the market, when I go to sell them, kind of like renting the land. Either way, all I know is that he moves down to the worst place possible. But so we got Abraham and Sarai and the whole clan going back to Canaan, right? And then once they're back in that region, they try to settle near Bethel, which I think is interesting because of what happens later with Jacob and the angels and everything. And Jubilees 32 is kind of fascinating. As you talked about, Abraham and Lot do part ways because of they need more space for their abundant livestock and resources. And then after, it seems like Abraham moves again to Hebron and then builds another altar to Yahweh. So I'm guessing there's no actual temple or standing building there. So I'm guessing these are like the outside altars made of unhewn stone. What would you think?
Yeah, that's what that would have to be, right? It doesn't say he builds a tabernacle. It doesn't say he builds a temple. It's just an altar. And so, yeah, it makes me wonder how the Father honors, where he says like in Exodus, he says at the place where I choose, where I put my name, he says.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the Father grants Abraham, that he puts his name wherever Abraham chooses to go, maybe in that place of the altar.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And of course, to me, there's a lot of information missing in these because we're about to get to chapter 14, where Abraham then goes to another guy who has seemingly another altar. Smoke, right? Yeah. So it's like there seems to be a lot of information missing as far as the and then just the fullness of the atmosphere of who's worshiping Yahweh and how established the practices of how to worship Yahweh were amongst the people in this region. Because what we read from last week's portions from 10 and 11, we've had the descendants of Shem running around. Abraham is not the only descendant of Shem. There's all these other guys and their descendants running around. And Abraham came out of Chaldea, where he grew up for a decent amount of time, and then Haran. So he wasn't living around these other descendants of Shem. So there's like this whole other story. If this were Game of Thrones, there's like a whole nother 3 episodes of a whole nother family line that we haven't seen yet, that we won't see until we get to heaven, apparently. But it's just like, there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening here. And then Abraham's about to start interacting with these other people in 14.
Yeah.
So
I'd be interested to see all the flashback scenes to fill in the details as well.
Right. It'd be interesting. It'd be a fun time when we get to the Father.